due to your busy schedule also. So today, my dear participants, the discussion for today's topic is on problem solving and decision making methods in R&D. The guest speaker is Dr. Srinivas Cherla. Sir is the Director for Sustainability, RICH, that is Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. Sir has an educational background of BTech in Mechanical Engineering from JNTU Hyderabad, MTech in Mechanical Engineering from Texas A&M University, and MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Sir has a professional skills in the product development, program management, strategic planning, business modeling, entrepreneurship, team development, decision-making frameworks, data analytics with R and Tableau, ANSYS, as well as the domain knowledge of Energy 4.0, smart grids, e-mobility, waste management, blockchain for energy, small enterprise software development. Sir, all this data was been collected from LinkedIn. If I am wrong, please correct me. Over to you, sir. You are done as a co-host, so you can share the screen, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Over to you.
So just give me a second so I can share my screen. Let me know once you're able to actually see the screen, okay? And so along with me today, yeah. So am I and share screen?
Yes, sir.
No, it doesn't let me share
madam.
the entire.
Yes. Aboli madam will share, sir.
No, I will share, but it doesn't let me share the entire screen. I only have to share a particular window, is it?
Yes, sir. Aboli madam also has been done as a co-host.
Okay. Okay. So, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Actually, that screen is not a PPT. Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. Just hold on. I have my colleague as well. Aboli, you might have to put yourself on mute.
My laptop is also on
mute. Audio is also mute. So, yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Padma, for giving us the opportunity to speak on this very interesting topic, that is problem solving and decision making, right? Methods in R&D. Now, with me, before I delve further into the topic, right, I would like to probably briefly introduce the other speaker here, who is Aboli Ingle. She is an associate here at Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, and has expertise in public health area, data analysis and research in public health area. So what I thought is let me give a general flavor of how different kinds of problem-solving tools are applicable to different streams. It could be engineering, it could be public health, it could be any other operational aspect, right? And so the choice of methods, the approaches that we take vary quite significantly. So I thought we'll present the overall picture to the audience here. I'll take a step back and first I'll introduce Rich. Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad is a Telangana state initiative. It is also supported by the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. Our primary mandate is to facilitate creation of innovation networks, right? And in simple terms, what that means is facilitate more collaboration between academic research institutions and industry and startups. Okay, we do this through multiple means, of course, interacting and mentoring startups, working with a lot of education institutions like Gokraju or IIT or right, any other institution, and trying to identify how their research capabilities are can be leveraged by the industry. And third, we do from time to time take up large interdisciplinary projects which require extensive collaboration between various different entities having complementary skill sets. Okay, so if there's a problem around agriculture insurance, it needs skill sets from the agriculture extension officers, it needs skill set from the horticulture or the forestry department. It needs data and inputs from maybe the National Remote Sensing Agency to identify the extent of crop damage automatically using visual imaging, satellite imagery, right? So these things do, these kind of collaborations, and also between the insurance companies like NABARD. Such collaborations don't just occur naturally, organically, and we come in, try to define these large problems, try to then form alliances, demonstrate projects, and show value of this project to the community at large. So we tend to work in three areas: agri, healthcare, and sustainability. All of them have one thing in common: a very high social impact. Okay. The second thing also is that the startups and innovations in these areas usually have a longer gestation period and longer incubation time. And third, because of the first two, consequently, they're not very attractive for the industry, at least in the initial inception stages, the companies. So we support mostly innovations in these areas. So that's a brief background about Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. If anyone is keen to know more or learn more, certainly stop by T-Hub in Hyderabad, and you can ask for Rich. We are very much over there. Okay, so beyond that, I'll move on to the topic for today. So, is it okay for me to move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, what do we exactly mean when we say we're talking about problem solving and decision making? So what exactly is a problem? So let's take off a situation scenario here that I go to a friend's place. Dr. Himbindu invites me for a cup of coffee. I go to her place today. She makes me a cup of coffee, and when I sip, it's not very hot, right? So is there a problem? And this is a question to the audience. Do you think there's a problem or there's no problem in this case? I would like participation. What went right, what went wrong, or what is the assessment here? Anyone among the audience? Okay. Is it the after lunch effect, or is it generally this quiet, the audience?
The audience are muted, sir.
Okay, so fine, we'll take a stab. Now, Dr. Himbindu, you might take this question and tell me, is there a problem, or you think it's completely fine in terms of this question here? I go to your place, you make me a cup of tea, and when I sip the tea, it's not hot. So is it a problem? Yes, no? If so, what do you think is the problem?
It's
Dr.
not a
Him,
problem.
pardon?
Yes, there is a problem.
And what do you then think is the problem here? What's the problem statement from your side? Hello?
Tea means always we expect a very hot.
Not sure. I'm not sure why I'm getting the echo. Can you repeat?
Expectation not reacted.
Okay, so the expectation is not reached. Okay, so you're right that somewhere there's a mismatch. I was expecting a hot cup of tea, and it what came to me was not hot. So, but maybe my requirements also were not very clear to you. Maybe I should have asked for a hot cup of tea, and you decided to make me a cold cup of tea because it was already so hot outside. And you said, I'll give him a cold iced tea, and you brought me cold iced tea, right? So it could happen because of multiple things. What I wanted was a cup of hot, steaming tea, and you decided it's already a pretty hot day. Why serve him more hot tea? I'll probably give him cold iced tea. And you brought me a cup of cold iced tea as a good host, right? So I think there's no problem when I look at it from your perspective, but there's a problem when I look at it from my perspective. So the reason I wanted to just bring out this very simple example is what are the key aspects that result to any problem, and then further decision making. First, it is lack of clear requirements. Okay, so I should have been more vocal, more clear, saying, hey, I prefer hot tea, right? Rather than just saying, hey, can you make me a cup of tea? The other thing is from the other person's perspective, rather than making assumptions, the other person also needs to dig deeper. So if I say a cup of tea, probably the other person needs to ask me, hey, do you prefer a hot tea? It's already pretty hot outside. Do you think a cold tea would be preferred, right? So that way it is much clear between you and me, so we don't end up into a problem in the first place. And then actually identifying the problem. So what was the problem here? Communication was the problem. Then developing a solution. What kind of solution? So this is a very simple problem. So we don't need to discuss it much, but there could be a solution that we confirm, cross-checking, right? Once there's a request placed, then you just gonna, I think you wanted a hot tea, right? Not a cold tea. So there could be some confirmation assessment. And then once it is done, we see that, okay, what I had expected hot tea. And if you still bring in cold tea, that means there's some real problem, right? I was asking you for hot tea. You confirmed that you'll get me a hot tea, and then you still bring me cold tea. Then there's some problem there, right? And then we have to further do iterations over that problem, right? So overall, the key steps in any problem solving to begin with are gathering information, that is asking the right questions, eliminating bias, my thought process versus what. So the general thing is, this is generally expected. No, let's not have any expectation. Take that bias out. Ask question and try to address it, take down the responses in a very unbiased manner. Don't draw any unnecessary assumptions or inferences. Second thing is scoping the problem. So the problem can be very large. You break it down, you try to address it in bit sizes so that you can progress in the solutioning of the problem, right? So you set constraints on what you'll do, what's the scope of problem, set constraints on whether it is time, whether it is money, or whatever else is needed to identify what tools you use to identify the problem, right? Defining a clear problem statement, and then further moving into solutioning of the problem statement. So at a problem identification point, you do not think about any solutions. It is just plain brainstorming to get the problem identification. That's it. Okay. Beyond that, then you look at the solutions. Now there's a separate phase for solution where you apply multiple frameworks which help you think through the problem in a more methodical manner, which help you analyze the problem either qualitatively or quantitatively, and arrive at decisions required to address that problem. And then once you have the solution, you look at implementing. You identify the performance indicators, you ensure that there's no external factors that have changed beyond what you had already factored in. And then you go through the implementation and you conduct periodic assessment to ensure that the problem doesn't recur in some other form or manner. Okay, so these are the key steps, I would say, that in general are applicable when you talk about problem solving. Also, the other thing that is very crucial here in problem solving is the choice of methodologies, and this is greatly influenced by the problem area. For instance, is the problem a technical one? Is it a operations related problem or management related problem? Or is it a business related problem? It could be some other focus area, right? So depending on the focus area, for instance, a technical problem could be improving performance of a product. So let us say I have this remote here, and I'm trying to improve the performance of this remote, whether it is durability of remote, longevity of the battery, it could be the distance which I can communicate through this remote. There could be several aspects, or increasing the functionality of the remote. So these are all technical problem statements. Operations problem statements. So now someone, let us say Samsung is manufacturing this remote, right? And they have a high rejection rate that these remotes are failing in the field quite frequently, or in the manufacturing, they do have multiple problems in assembly, right? So there could be many things that could go wrong in the product itself. And so then you apply a different kind of a problem, what do you say, solution methodology. So for instance, in the first case, you might apply QFD or AHP. In the second case, you might apply what we call a fishbone diagram, right? Wherein you look at man, material, methodology, and several other things for addressing the problem, right? And third thing could be a business problem statement. That is, well, this was selling quite well, 1 lakh pieces a month. Now, all of a sudden, the sales has dropped to 20,000 pieces a month. That's a business problem, right? Nothing else changed. You don't see any higher rejection rate. You don't see any performance issues. But then suddenly the sales drop. It could be because there's a competing product, or all of a sudden there's the consumers are shifting away from this because there's a technology like a smartphone which can completely replace and obsolete your product. So there are business problems as well, and then you have business frameworks to address those business problems. And also the choice of fields. For instance, health care sector or public health sector may have different methodologies applied. Agri sector may have different methodology applied, and tech sector may have different methodologies applied for their problem statements. Okay, so the reason I was going through these two slides is to set the context that what is a problem, how do you solve the problem, and what methodologies you apply to solve a problem will change based on the context. And with that, now I think before I jump into the tech problem solving exercises, I would give my colleague Aboli a chance and opportunity to actually talk about some interesting work that she has been doing in the area of public health and applying research frameworks, multiple research frameworks to capture consumer inputs or patient inputs and address problems in the public health sector. So she has some fascinating stories on how she has been applying these frameworks in during the COVID, post COVID in multiple areas. Without any further ado, I hand it over to Abuli. I'll mute myself. You can share the. Let me share my screen again.
Can you mute? So good afternoon. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, sir, for setting the context. My name is Aboli Ingre, and I come from a public health background. For today, I'll be explaining the research approach that we consider while conducting this public health studies or public health research. So as we now understand that the research methodologies and its approach depends on the problem statement that we are addressing. Likewise, in public health also, we decide the research approach based on the problem statement that we are addressing and also the population that we are targeting. So before going into the details of research perspective, I would like to give you all a brief about public health and what are the different components associated with it. So as you can see on the screen, public health is a multidisciplinary subject. So to begin with, public health refers to the science and art of preventing disease, prolonging life, promoting physical health and efficiencies through organized community effort. So public health focuses on various aspects of population health, which includes disease prevention. So all the efforts and the interventions are targeted in preventing certain diseases. So to give you a best example, so we have intervention programs like immunization programs where we immunize the population against particular diseases, right? The immunization process starts at the beginning of the birth. So this is one of the great example of disease prevention. And then there comes health promotion. So where we target, where we try to encourage and support the individuals and community as a whole to adopt healthy lifestyle and make choices that promote overall well-being of an individual. And then comes health surveillance. So health surveillance is one of the important aspect of public health. So what we do is in health surveillance, we try to monitor the health status of the population. That is to identify the trends and outbreaks and health risks that are there currently present in the population. So how do we do it? We collect data and analyze this data on disease patterns, risk factors, health indicators, which can guide public health interventions and policies. If we are better aware about the disease trend, we can then prepare our action plan accordingly. So that's how health surveillance is done. One more important component is environmental health. So what is environmental health? So basically, public health also addresses the impact of an environmental factor on health. So it includes like ensuring clean air, water, food, as well as assessing and managing the environmental hazards that can affect the health of a population. To give you an example, in case if we come across a flood, in case some area is affected with a flood, so the flood comes with influenza viruses, then this dengue, malaria, and all these things. So public health also has an action plan to address this environmental factors or environmental risk factors that can affect the health of the population in general. So also one of the important aspect when you think about public health is the health policy and management. So we do have we develop and implement policies and strategies to help to improve the health outcomes. So how it is done? So it is done with the help of research, which I'll be talking to you in detail after, in the coming slides. So these are some of the core elements of public health. The list is not limited to this. As I already mentioned, that this field is multidisciplinary and it encompasses a wide range of activities which are aimed at protecting and improving the health of population. So now coming towards the public health research and its importance. Right. So public health, as you can see in this picture given on the slide, research is in the center. That means research is the core of public health. May that be public health or any other field, we feel that it's my understanding that research is one of the important aspect of any field. And it plays a crucial role in every area. So some of the reasons why research is so important in the field of public health is, first is generating evidence. So what research helps is, research helps to generate scientific evidence, which can address health issues, diseases, risk factors, and interventions. So this research helps us to come up with an action plan, understand the disease in a particular way or in a better way, and thus draft and develop interventions based on that, based on the findings. Then informing decision making. So public health decisions, whether it may be at individual or community level or policy level, should be based on some reliable resource. So where this resource comes from? It comes from research. Research provides the necessary evidence for decision making related to any intervention or program that we implement in the community or in the nation as a whole. Then evaluating interventions and program. We do implement, what if we do implement some program and some intervention and we don't know what is the effect and what is the impact of that? Will that be helpful? It won't serve the need unless and until we understand what is the impact that the program or intervention implemented is creating. So thus it is research helps in evaluating the intervention and programs, intervention programs, and several other projects that we implement in the area of public health. So it helps us to better assess the outcomes and impact of any intervention or any project for that matter. Identifying health disparities. So disparities are observed in every field, may that be health or may that be social, and everywhere. But what research helps here is to understand the differences in the health outcome among the different population. For example, rural Hyderabad, rural Telangana may not be able to access certain health benefits, but urban Telangana is able to access certain facilities with respect to health. So that disparities can be we can understand through research. Guiding policy development. So research provides scientific evidence which can guide and develop the health, which can guide and help in developing the health policies, public health policies. Responding to public health emergencies, as I've already mentioned, during public health emergencies, like there's an outbreak COVID was an outbreak. It started and then it was all over the place. So what do we do in certain situations? So during these outbreaks, pandemic, so research plays a critical role in understanding the disease. Like what is the disease pattern? How exactly is it? How exactly is the transmission dynamics? How is the transmission cycle? Whether the transmission is from human to human or it is from animal to human. So research helps us to understand the transmission dynamics here. And based on the findings of this research, we can have some effective control measures. So this is how research can be helpful in so many ways in the field of public health. And definitely, last not the least, advancing scientific knowledge. So this research definitely contributes to the advancement of scientific knowledge in the field. Whatever findings we have, we can contribute it in the to the literature that is available, that is already available in the field. So research in public health is essential for evidence-based decision-making, policy development, and improving population health outcomes. So that's how important research is considered in the field of public health. So moving forward, I would like to give you the basic framework. So when we start or when we want to conduct any research study or any research, what are certain things that we have to look at when we, what is the framework that we look at when we start a research thing? The first thing comes is conceptualizing the problem. So here we try to identify the problem, like what is the problem according to us? And then we try to understand whether the problem that we feel, is it that important? Is it that important that we should address it? And then rationalizing this problem. So basically, then we have to think, if we solve this problem, what are the benefits of this problem? If this problem is solved, whether the society will be benefited if the problem is solved. So that's how conceptualizing the problem happens. You have this thing, like we make certain assumptions that XYZ might be a problem. Then according to us, yes, it is an important problem. If we solve this, then certain group or certain the population can be benefited out of it. But how do we confirm this? We confirm this with some background literature review. So you do have a problem in your mind, but when you actually have to go and check, you have to understand and study the literature that is available surrounding that topic, whether the topic is a full-fledged researched one, whether it is studied already, what are certain aspects of the problem that is not yet discovered or not yet studied. You have to understand your literature thoroughly. And this literature gives you your research gap. Okay, fine. This is there. This is already there, available in the literature. This is not available in the literature. So there's a research gap that is there. So with the help of this research gap, what you will be doing, you will then formulate objectives of your research. So objectives in the sense, you will have a general objective of your research. What exactly do you want to target in your research? I'll give you a simple example. I'll use the same example in the rest of the presentation. Let's say, for example, we have to understand the prevalence of hypertension in a population, right? So this is your general objective of research, that you want to understand the prevalence of hypertension in the population. So what will be your research question here? That what is the prevalence of hypertension in the population, in XYZ population? Let's say Hyderabad only. What is the prevalence of hypertension in Hyderabad? So this question that we frame is based on the objective that we've derived out of the research gap, which we studied, which we got from the literature review. So based on the, now we have objective, now we have our research question in place. And with the help of the research question, we'll develop a testable hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis? Is basically a prediction that at the end of this thing, I might have a result, like I might have the percentages, the prevalence of hypertension in this population. So you derive at a testable hypothesis. Then comes one of the important aspect when you think about research is your research methodology. Like what is the type of study that you're going to choose? So there are n number of approaches that you can take, but your approach will always depend upon the objective and the research question that you've drafted. In this case, we've drafted that we want to understand the prevalence of hypertension in the population, right? So what we just want to go to the field, we want to understand how many people are affected with hypertension in this particular set of population. So here we just want to take a quick snap of the population. So the ideal study here would be cross-sectional study. I'll be talking more about it in the coming slides. So based on, so this was a basic example, like how from the research question that I framed with the help of the objective, I derived at a type of study that I want to move forward in this research. And based on this type of study that you're selecting, your method of data collection will depend on that, your management and analysis will depend on that. So here it will be a basic data collection, simple randomization data collection method where you can go out in the field. You will have one questionnaire prepared with all the important necessary questions. It will be a structured questionnaire, and with the help of that you will be collecting data, analyzing it, and will try to understand what is the prevalence of hypertension in the population. So that's how we derive at the research methodology. And once you have all these things in place, then comes the work plan. Like how exactly are we planning to do it? What is our project timeline? When are we planning to do research, literature review? When are we planning to do our data collection? When are we planning to do our analysis? So we should have that plan in place. And project implementation, once we have the plan in place, we should also have all the resources that we're going to utilize during this project timelines, like who will be involved in literature review, who will be conducting the data collection, who will be doing the analysis. So we should have all these resources also in place when we come up with the timeline for this research. That's project implementation. And the last is plan for dissemination. So once you have everything in place, you have your results, you have your everything, but now you have data with you. But how nicely and how correctly you present your data is also important. Your findings that out of this research should be presented very concisely and very accurately through your research project, that this was your research objective, this were your research question, this is the methodology that you adopted, and this is the result that you've got. So your findings should come out very clearly in your project report. So this project report will have everything, right from the introduction to literature review, like understanding the gap, then objectives, research questions, then type of methodology, the steps that you took during the methodology, like data collection, what were your management procedures, the analysis that you've used, and your timelines, your project implementation, everything. And then you'll have your results. After results, there will be some discussion, like how did you do the research? What are the limitations when you were doing this research? And at the end, you will conclude your research. So while concluding your research, some of the key things should be highlighted while concluding your research is some of the key learnings or key takeaways from your results. For example, XYZ were found to be, I'll use some number only, 10% of the population in Hyderabad was found to be prevalent for hypertension. So your conclusion should be able to capture the important key takeaways from your research. And then the last thing comes is publication. Now that you have the findings, now that you have done the research, you have findings which can be useful for someone. I mean, your research can be a fundamental research for someone else. So how this can be done is you publish your paper. You publish your paper for a wider distribution of your finding. Your findings can be used by someone else. Just like you have done your literature review, someone else can go and do his literature review and can use your information and use your findings as some supporting statements and some supporting documents for his or her research. So that's how the whole framework of research is. I mean, this is the procedure that we follow when we go to conduct any research studies in public health. And then comes the important aspect, research methodologies. So in public health, there are three types of roughly the methodologies are categorized into three groups, that is quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. So what is a qualitative research and what is the quantitative research? Anyone from the audience would like to answer that? I mean, it's already there on the screen, but what is the basic difference between a qualitative and quantitative research? Anyone? Okay, then. So to begin with, so a qualitative research basically tries to understand any phenomena. Like in qualitative research, we try to understand human experiences and their behavior through non-numerical data collection, like qualitative data collection method. May that be an interview, focus group discussion, or text, observation, whatever. But qualitative research tries to understand the human experiences and behavior through qualitative data. So here we are trying to understand the phenomena. While in quantitative research, we try to understand, we try to quantify the phenomena, like how many percentage of population is, what is the percent of population that is affected with hypertension in Hyderabad. So you're quantifying the data, as well as you're trying to establish or examine some relationship between variables using numerical data. So I have an answer from KNV Kasim. Qualitative, a method for developing a better understanding of human and social sciences and understanding human behavior. Yes, exactly. It's a method of understanding human experiences and human behavior. Thank you for that, Mr. Kasim. And moving forward, the quantitative mixed methods are basically a mix of qualitative and quantitative approach. So for example, same example, we now know that 10% of the population is affected with hypertension in Hyderabad. But now we want to know why this 10% of population is affected with hypertension in Hyderabad. So what approach we'll take here? We'll take qualitative approach, where we'll try to understand why this 10% of population is affected with hypertension. I'm just giving a vague example, but mixed method has both the approaches. That is what I'm trying to convey here. So moving forward to qualitative research. So qualitative research is basically a method of inquiry which emphasizes on understanding the human behavior or experiences using qualitative data, qualitative data. May that be an interview, may that be a focus group discussion, text, observation, or anything. So qualitative research has around like 5 different approaches, and the first is phenomenology. So basically, phenomenological approach is that approach where we try to understand the subjective experiences of the individual. I mean, the one we are interviewing or one we are trying to understand. So here in phenomenological approach, we try to understand the subjective experiences. I'll give you my example only. So when I was doing my master's, I did conduct one research study, qualitative research, It was about understanding the lived experiences of people with mobility related disability. So what is the subject here? To understand the lived experiences of people with mobility related disability using assistive devices. So this is our context. The context of my research was to understand the experiences. Now we do have a subject here. So our interviews or whatever inquiry we want to conduct in this approach or in this research would be somewhere related to the context that I've said or the subject that I've selected for this research. So we had same procedure. We tried to conceptualize our project. We did our literature review. We understood the gap, like what exactly is the gap. Out of that, we understood that hardly there's any research, any foundational research, which was talking about the lived experiences of people with mobility related disability using assistive devices in India. So that's how we came to our objective. We drafted our research question, and then was the question that which approach should we select? As it was a very subjective approach here, the first preference definitely is phenomenology. So that's why we move ahead with the phenomenological approach, where we first developed or created a interview guide. So this interview guide is used when we conduct these interviews or when we meet these respondents. So this interview guide had questions related to the subject, like a narrative approach. Phenomenological approach does not go like how you talk, I listen. No, a phenomenological research will try to understand the subject in detail. There will be some moderation happening. A moderator is definitely there during the interviews, who will try to moderate the discussion around the topic that we want to understand. So we had that interview guide. We tried to understand the experiences. So how did we do it? So we started with the interviews, may that be in-depth interview, focus group discussion, or any general interview. It always starts with some rapport building. So we try to understand, we ask them questions like, how does your day look like? What do you do? Who all are there in your family? So there's some rapport building session that happens in the beginning. And after that, we slowly moves into the subject, like when did you come across disability? What did you, when did you come across disability? Was it there right from the beginning, or you met with some accident? We don't approach this much, but we do give them a free flow to give us all the information that we need. So then we slowly moves into assistive devices, like when did you start using it? From how long are you using this device? So that now we have the experiences related to the subject and how it has changed, how the assistive devices has changed your experiences, your daily activities, and things like that. So now the respondents start answering questions according in the subject areas, or in the areas that we in the subject area, right? So you get all these experiences, you get all the information that you need, which is related to the subject area. So once we have this interview in place, then comes like, when do we start? When do we stop interviewing all these individuals? So like a quantitative research, qualitative does not have a number decided already that we will have just 30 interviews or 40 interviews or 20 interviews or 5 interviews. No, it depends on the saturation point of the data. So what is the saturation point? Basically, when you start understanding that whatever information or whatever experiences that these individuals are sharing are some or less the same, there is some saturation of data that is happening. So once you start identifying that, that is the time you realize that you have to stop interviewing. So may that be 10 or 12 or 20 or 40. So the researcher should be aware of this thing very clearly, that when he has to stop interviewing the candidates. So now when we have, now comes the analysis part. So when we have this interviews with us. It starts with, so these interviews here are called as qualitative data. So the qualitative data is then converted into quotes. How do we do it? We start highlighting and highlighting all the information relevant to our subject. So we start highlighting this information, and this information is then clubbed together in different categories. So these categories at the end are then further clubbed, and there is 1 or 2 times we do it. After the last clubbing that happens are the themes that we derive at. So the themes are basically your representation of your data. So what your data, what you want to express through your data can be expressed through the themes. For example, we can have 4 or 5 themes expressing your data, that your data talks about their lived experiences, their challenges and barriers, their life with disability or life with assisted devices. So your data, the themes talk about your data. So that's how we do, that's how we conduct a qualitative research, and that's how we analyze the data for qualitative research. Phenomenological is the most used approach in qualitative research. That's why I thought of explaining it more. And moving forward is ethnography. So basically, ethnography is this approach involves studying the culture or the social behavior of a group. So what we do here is, for example, if you want to understand the social behavior of any particular group, may that be a tribe or so. So the researcher will go participate in the daily activities of these individuals. He'll go, he'll observe whatever activities they are doing, whether they are doing any separate puja or whether they have any separate beliefs or values or practices. So a researcher won't ask any questions, but he will observe everything that is happening surrounding him. So that's how ethnography approach is done. Then case study. A case study is basically involves studying any particular individual or a group or situation in depth to gain insight about any particular phenomena. So basically here we try to collect and analyze the range of qualitative data such as interviews, observation, documents to develop a detailed understanding of a case. Then grounded theory is basically this approach involves developing theories and from the data collected during the process. We don't assume anything, or we don't want to, we don't have a subject here that we want this particular information only to come out of this interview. No, we let the respondent speak, and out of the information that he shared, we analyze it and we derived at a theory. Okay, this might be the reason. This is there. XYZ is the reason it's happening. So we derive at a theory or in grounded theory approach. And last one is narrative research. So this approach focuses on stories that individuals tell about their experiences and how these stories shape their identity and sense of self. Like how do they look at themselves, or how they story narrate their story. So it's like a narrative research. We let the respondent talk and narrate his life stories, and based on that we try to understand the how do that person see himself or herself, and what is the sense of self. So these are some of the approaches that are there in qualitative research. So qualitative research is a powerful tool for understanding human behaviors and experiences in depth. And these various approaches offer a range of methods for exploring and interpreting that data. Then comes qualitative research. So qualitative research is used to measure and quantify a phenomena. We use it to test our hypothesis and establish any cause and effect relationship. So qualitative research means epidemiological research methods in public health terms is further divided into experimental and observational experimental and observational approach. So in experimental, we provide some intervention, and in observation, we observe the population, like we observe the population, its outcome, its exposure, and various things. So I'll start with the experimental. In experimental, there are two types of approach that we can take: randomized control trials and non-randomized control trials. So randomized control trials are basically individuals or study units are assigned randomly. For example, you will have two experimental groups, and one with the new therapy and the other with the current therapy, like whatever therapy is there. And then we try to understand what is the impact of the new therapy in comparison to the current therapy. That's how randomized control trial is done. And non-randomized control is something that involves group randomization. For example, hospital or IG ward. In this case, we have two groups again: control and experimental, where the experimental group here may be hospital any hospital. For example, XYZ hospital is given this treatment and the other hospital is giving other treatment. So the randomization, non-randomized, it is quite structured, and then the results are compared accordingly. Then we have observational. In observational, it is further divided into analytical and descriptive research. So the basic difference between analytical and descriptive is descriptive research basically looks at one or more variable in a sample, like an analytical research tries to establish some relationship between the two variables, like outcome, exposure. And in observation, we just look at the variable. Okay, fine. What is the, we just try to understand in descriptive, what is happening, what is the percentage, what is the prevalence, and things like that. So analytical has cohort and case control approach. So a cohort study is basically, we try to understand the relationship between exposure and outcome. So for example, let's see, there's a group of smokers, and there's also in comparison group of non-smokers. So this group of smokers and the other group, which is smokers, will be examined over a period of time. And then we'll try to understand, now that they had some exposure, how many individuals from this group has developed lung cancer, and from the group of non-smokers, how many have developed lung cancer. And we'll try to understand the association between two. Here, we establish some association, and we try to understand the basic association between these two variables, that is exposure, which was smoking, and outcome, which was lung cancer. And then there is case control study, where we again we compare two groups of people, but we start with disease condition here. They are already affected with lung cancer, and we then go backward, and we try to understand, okay, fine, whether this individual was affected with or was exposed to smoking or not. So the case control design goes backward, while the cohort studies goes prospective, in the sense forward. Then comes the descriptive approach. The most commonly known descriptive approach is case control study. So case control study is, in simple terms, I would say that case control is just a snapshot of the population. What exactly is happening in the population at that given point of time. When I started my presentation, that time only I gave you a simple example about that hypertension. We wanted to understand the prevalence. So we went to the population with a questionnaire. We got all the information, and then we derived at some results. So that means we just got a snapshot of the population. It's just that. cross-sectional is just understanding the variables in the given population. Here, the variable was hypertension prevalence. And then descriptive also has case reports and ecological studies, but case reports are again the same thing. Where a group of or series of case reports involving patients who were given similar treatment are studied, and then the reports of this case studies usually contain detailed information of individual patient. For example, a certain group of people is given co-vaccine as an intervention. So we try to understand this group and we'll derive at some series of case or case report out of this study. So that's how we do case reports. And I think that's it from my end. I hope you've understood the basics of qualitative and quantitative research. And if there's any question, you can ask me at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, any doubts? Thank you, Ms. Aboli. Given us a very brief and very clear-cut vision about how the research has been done in a case of a hypertension. Thank you so much. Any doubts from the participants?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
It was really a wonderful session, madam.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So I take over again. Do we want a break here, or do we continue the?
We'll continue session.
Okay, fine. Yeah, Aboli certainly needs a break after the presentation. So, yeah, to continue forward. So I guess the intent I wanted Aboli to talk about the public health perspective is to introduce how important it is to have the right inputs, right? Otherwise, it is just garbage in, garbage out, right? So getting the right inputs through proper methodologies is very important for R&D. Whenever you have a hypothesis, how do you then go back and validate the hypothesis without having proper information? So with that in your minds, now I would like to proceed further to what we do in the field of technology or product development. Right? So there are multiple methodologies here, but one of the most popular and successful approach or framework that is used is stage gate approach for product development. Okay, here I'm using a product development framework, but it equally applies to R&D as well. So this stage gate approach is divided into 5 distinct stages. Okay, and at each stage you have a gatekeeper or a decision-making gate, wherein the participants in the process, the key stakeholders decide whether to go forward to the next stage or to go back and work on the current stage again and come back, or to shelf the project altogether. Right. So you start off with an ideation phase wherein a blue sky activity or some kind of ideation activity is conducted, and multiple ideas are proposed for taking forward, whether they could be research ideas or they could be product ideas. Further, then you go into exploring these ideas, seeing whether there's any potential in the ideas, and then creating an initial presentation to explain more clearly, concisely what the product idea is to the decision makers, who are usually the business gatekeepers. So you have multiple kinds of gatekeepers. You have technology gatekeepers, you have business gatekeepers, we have market gatekeepers, right? And we have manufacturing gatekeepers, and each one has a distinct role. There is the technology gatekeeper, is well versed with the technologies around, and takes a call on whether this particular technology is ahead of time, just in time, or already a lost opportunity. The business gatekeeper also looks at business priorities, to do this project or to do some other project, which is more important.
I can see my presentation on the screen.
Oh, is my presentation showing up? The stage gate product development approach?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. So let me. Okay, let me know if you're able to see
Yes,
it now.
sir. Yes, now it's visible.
Okay. So, okay. Um, so yeah, I was explaining about the stage gate approach for product development. And the first gate is the idea screening gate. Once the idea screening gate is through, then you come into the product definition gate, wherein you screen the product idea, you present it to the management. And here I was explaining that there are multiple types of gatekeepers taking different functions: manufacturing, technology, market, finance, right, and leadership. And each one looks at a different area. So, for instance, a market guy may say, well, among the 5 or 6 product ideas that have been proposed, these two are more relevant to the market, Indian market. These two are more relevant to the European market. So we will pursue these for India, these for Europe, something like that. So they'll come out with recommendations, right? Or they may stagger it, saying we'll pursue, prioritize 1, 2, 3 ideas in that order. First we'll finish one, then I think it will be time for 2. So that's a market gatekeeping. Financial gatekeeper assesses the financial requirements, though they come in a little later, but they do assess the financial requirements and say no or yes to the financial say inputs for required for the development and R&D efforts. So each gatekeeper plays a particular role. Once the product definition is done, then you go into prototyping, which is developing a really minimum viable product. And what I mean by minimum viable product is, say, if you look at this smartphone today, it is well evolved, but it wasn't this way in the beginning. A touch screen would have been much smaller. You would have had keys and touch screen together. And so what I'm trying to say is that a minimum viable product probably will just have a touch screen which can do only one function, that is, it can only make a phone call and nothing else. So you at least demonstrate the concept of a smartphone, that okay, through a touch you can make a call, you can cut a call, and you can maybe do 1 or 2 more things. You're demonstrating the concept, and then you build on that and say, there's a lot more that can be done, but I need money to take it forward and do a detailed product development. That is the stage 3. So until stage 2, the what do you say, investments by the organization into the development of product will be very, very minimal, to nothing. So you could have hundreds of ideas that are screened and prototyped, but barely a handful, 5 or 6 ideas would then go into the detailed design stage. This is after the gate 3 clearance. This is where now the company starts putting significant amount of resources, whether it is manpower, marketing, or any other sales assessments and other things, to ensure that the building, preparing for the product to be launched in the next 1 year. So you start making some noise around, we're going to be launching this, we're going to be doing this and that, all sorts of things. So a lot of investment commitments go into starting from the detailed design phase. And once the detailed design phase is cleared, its objectives, clearly defined performance criteria are met, it goes into validation and testing. And validation and testing can be multiple types, again, in the field, in the lab, in a market, in a specific market. As I said, if the product is only meant for 18 to 30-year-olds, then you only test with those kind of a consumer and not with the 30 plus, right? That's a specific market that you have. So validating for a market, validating, conducting validations on two different products. So you may have very similar products with slightly different features that you want to again release in the market, and then you see which one should I finally go for a launch. There's slight differences, but I would test A/B kind of analysis. So there are multiple frameworks that are applied for validation testing. And finally, once it is cleared the validation gate as well, which is the gate 5, you go into commercialization, which is taking the product, mass manufacturing the product, and then putting it on the shelf. Further, once it is on the shelf, there's a gate 6, which is the launch gate. But there are also gates beyond that. That is, once the product is launched, then you have post-launch gates, which evaluate the performance of that product, performance of that R&D feature in the market, and decide when it is time to again further invest money into developing that and upgrading the product, or maybe obsoleting the product if it has served its commissioning time. Okay, so these decisions are done further beyond the gate 6 in the post-launch phases. Okay. Yeah, so the primary goal again is to get validation from market before companies invest a lot of time in developing the product, clearly being able to identify what needs to be developed, doing iterative product development, and ensuring that only projects which and R&D which is worth pursuing is taken forward. And by doing all this, you minimize the failure risk for the organization. And yeah, you also are then able to integrate these with manufacturing processes very well. So I will now walk you through a few frameworks which are used in product development. So number one is ideation discovery stage. There are multiple frameworks again, but I'll just cover a couple for being really concise here. And mind mapping. Mind mapping is a very simple tool which is used extensively to brainstorm multiple ideas. And again, just being non-judgmental, but looking at, okay, I have a problem. How do I address this problem? What are the different ways? What are the different approaches we can do it? So for instance, I've taken this out of a Gartner playbook on brain mapping, when they say, how do we sell ice cream in the coldest part of the world? So this is a problem statement. Now we have to do, whether you say research or you have to do some brainstorming around it. And the brain mapping exercise, there are multiple teams which have breakout sessions, and they come out with ideas. So one may say price, the other may say, okay, when I say price, you could go by offering discounts. You could offer a limited edition versions which are more premium, right? You could also look at playing and gamifying the temperature aspect. That is, you just launch a campaign saying freezing fun days, right? And wherein you have a Friday fun at a low temperature, and then you may offer again a warmer ice cream category, which is in the interiors. Okay, so you might offer multiple kinds of ice cream categories. I would have done the opposite. That is, set up a warm ice cream in the outside where it is freezing, and then colder ice cream indoors. So there could be multiple approaches to this. Convenience playing on whether consumers might want ice creams home delivered, consumers might want ice creams at the parlor, ice cream parlor, or there could be some other coupon-based prices and other things that you advertise. And then offers, right? Looking at daily flavor of the day kind of offer, or complimentary, you offer ice cream with some other coffee, blah, 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 right? So there are multiple ideas. And really being non-judgmental and first capturing all the ideas, okay, without any second thought on whether the idea is good or bad. And we'll worry about that good or bad later on when we look at analyzing these ideas. A different approach, slightly different and more structured, is the morphological analysis, right? In this case, what we're trying to see is that the problem statement, for instance, is how can we leverage existing technologies for new product development? And then this is a broad problem statement, and you might want to segregate this in three or more multiple kind of categories. One is you could use technology, but you also look at what are the other things. You need consumer acceptance for this, and you need the service of existing products. So now you identify what are the technology advancements: 3D printing, cloud computing, 5G, digital twins. These are all the things which are happening today. What is the consumer expectation? Consumer expectation is they're looking at speed, efficiency, usability, right? And where are the existing products today, right? The existing products like and services, Google Maps is there, smartphones are there. These are the existing services and products. Now, what you do is you just randomly map these and say, okay, I will use 3D printing, smartphones to improve the usability and do 3D printing. So now probably there's no product today that offers this kind of service using these technologies, but you have just now framed out a problem statement. Similarly, I could go further and ideate and say, okay, I would use wireless chargers for enhancing flexibility in 5G. Okay, so now I've just come up with one more problem statement. Whether it makes sense or not, we'll worry about it later on. But now at this point, since innovation may not happen naturally, you are just seeding innovation through looking at what could be the consumer needs, what are the technology options we have, and what is the market need. Kind of trying to line them up and form some business problem statements that you can take forward, ideations. Okay. A third very contra approach is called a worst idea approach, wherein the participants are actually encouraged to think of the worst possible idea for a given problem statement, right? So you are given a problem, think of the worst possible idea you can do for a bicycle. Now, what this really gives is it forces the consumer to think out of the box, because now he's breaking the stereotype and looking at completely contra, right? So what is the worst possible thing that I can do with this remote? Maybe I say, yeah, I can use it as a I don't know, zapping device for mosquitoes, right? That's probably a worst possible idea, but it is an idea. Now you go back and think whether it makes sense to include that feature in this or not, right? Yeah, so for instance, for bicycles, it could be that bicycle with no tires, walking only bicycle. Okay, who would want a walking only bicycle? But probably it's a good idea. Huh? How about bicycle with flat tires only? So these are some of the worst possible ideas, and you then go back and figure out whether there's potential in any of these. So now these are some of the frameworks that we can use for the first stage, which is ideation, right? Then we go into product definition stage and actually detailing out the product for a minimum viable product. That's the second phase. Over here, we have one of the most wonderful tools called quality function deployment. What it enables is it enables us to translate the consumer needs or wants into functional requirements for a product. So there's a big difference, right? What you need or want is maybe one thing, and what is needed in the product to serve your particular need is a different thing. So when I look at an R&D thing, so someone may say, I want, yeah, now it's rainy season, I don't want to get wet, okay, or I need clothes which stay dry. So that is the R&D goal or objective that is given. But what do you need functionally in this attire or in this clothing so that it doesn't get wet and it always stays dry is what is the functional requirement for the product. So once you do the need analysis using the ideation approach, or what Aboli was talking about earlier, qualitative, quantitative analysis for understanding the need of consumers, then you come into, okay, once I have a clear need from the consumer, now how do I take things forward, right? So first thing is identify what consumer wants. So Aboli gave a long talk on how to do that. Then we relate what the consumer wants to the product house. How do we achieve that with the product? And then we identify relationship between the different house. So there could be multiple house. How do we do? How do we keep the cloth dry? How do we keep it stiff? How do we keep it? What do you say? Rugged and more reliable. So there could be multiple things that we have to do, and there could be a correlation or relationship between each of these house, and developing importance rating, and then evaluating competing products. So not just your product, but also looking at how the competitors' product are ranked as far as these criteria are concerned. So I think it will be clear if I walk you through an example here rather than explaining it this way. Right? So we use a classic tool for quality function deployment called House of Quality. Over here on the left-hand side, you have what we call the consumer wants. That is what the consumer has requested, right, to be available in the product. So if so if I talk about this remote, a consumer might have wanted a mosquito zapper in this. Okay, then how to satisfy that consumer want? What are the functionalities that you need? You need a laser, you need some other whatever all-out kind of dispenser which dispenses some pesticide or insecticide. So what are the different things that you need? It would be going on the top, the house to satisfy consumer wants, functionally what you need, and a relationship between what the consumer needs and what the product feature functionalities are, right? You have weighted average in terms of you prioritize these things, what the consumer wants and what functionalities you can deliver, and then look at objectively analyzing which of these wants are most important and can be satisfied with least amount of effort, and which of these wants you are willing to forego because they don't contribute too much towards the actual performance and actual product, right? And then you also look at evaluating a consumer competitor product based on the same functionalities and wants. So we'll look at it in the next thing in much more detail. So I've taken this example, which was available on the internet, talks about a team let us think it is all of us here. We have been charged with a design challenge for a new camera, right? The first action is to construct a house of quality. Now the point is that, okay, we have a problem statement that we have been tasked to design a new camera that looks completely different, more futuristic, and is a lot more functional than what we see on the screen here, right? So how do we do that? Okay. So what does the consumer want first? There could be a couple of things that we note down through the research, the quantitative or qualitative research. That is, the consumer wants the camera to be lightweight. He wants it to be easy to use, very reliable, easy to hold in hand and carry. And then they want an additional feature of color correction, right? So these may be some of the key things. And then you rate them from lowest to highest, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, right? And so you can see that, okay, this is how the consumer is giving most weightage to reliability, then to ease of use and lightweight. And yeah, color correction is probably not something the consumers are very keen about. Maybe only 1 in 10 really needs that. And for them, there could be some other specific product which is launched, right? If it is too difficult to accommodate it in this product, we probably will let go of these and take them up in a different product. Okay. Then we look at how we can satisfy these consumer wants. So for longer life, we need lower electricity consumption. We need to make sure for light weight, it's made out of aluminum or plastic, but then aluminum may be more durable than plastic. So reliability was a very key factor, right? So we look at the correlation there. Autofocus, auto exposure, paint palette, ergonomic design. So these are some of the additional ways in which you can solve the consumer needs. Consumer needs of lightweight, easy to use, reliable, steady, and color correction. Okay. Then we map between the two, showing, okay, how are reliability and lightweight mapped. Sorry. Okay, how are reliability and lightweight mapped? They are very, aluminum, reliability and aluminum. So I think it's a strong correlation. Whereas reliability and what was the first parameter? Low electricity requirement, right? Reliability, low electricity requirement may or may not be so strongly related. So we, as experts, we assess this thing, and yeah, so reliability and light battery material probably are not very closely related. So you go ahead and map the consumer wants and the product functionalities. Now, once this relationship matrix is ready, then you look at weighing in. You also can look at relation between these consumer functionalities, right? So by using low electricity requirements, you're probably addressing 3 other actions, that is autofocus, auto exposure, and paint palette. So these 3 are probably very closely correlated. Similarly, autofocus probably is very closely correlated to auto exposure and paint palette. So if I decide that I don't want autofocus, maybe it will also impact my auto exposure and paint palette. Right? So these are some of the things that you have to analyze and form the interrelationship between these factors. And then you look at further doing a evaluation of competitor products vis-a-vis the functional requirements identified for your product. Right? And then here you have a good, fair, and poor kind of ranking, right? And then you say that, okay, this company is doing fairly good. So end of the day, you'll be benchmarking against the companies which score higher in this sheet. finally, yeah, you look at the a weighted average kind of a thing for technically defining exactly what functional attributes are needed, and then how to take these forward in product development, right? Yeah, here. Okay, so functionally this is there, but now you break this function down into technical specification. That is low electricity requirements. By that, what I wanted to convey is that it should be less than half amp power consumption. When I say aluminum component, I say that okay, it has to be less than 75% of the weight of current product. Autofocus between 2 feet and infinity. So you are giving very clear specifications for the product, which makes it easy for the R&D and development team to work within the set constraints of the product. Of course, if they exceed and they're able to give something which is even better, more the merrier. But otherwise, these are at least expected to be delivered by the product development guys. Okay, take into account and deliver. So that is what we do through the quality function deployment. Any questions on the QFD process so far? Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to proceed further to one more framework that we use called, and this is going into the next stage. That is, once you have the minimum viable product, all the functional requirements for the minimum viable product come out of the quality function deployment. And then you start designing the product in much more detail, right? And here is when you actually run into decision-making problems. That is, okay, which feature do I drop, right? Or do I launch the product in 2 phases? It may be too much to accommodate this entire thing. I will launch a product with half the features in the first phase because there's no competent product which is even close. And then I'll develop the remaining as I go forward in the next phase, right? So taking these decisions, making these business decisions, making these technical decisions is done in the next phase, which is detailed design stage. And here we have a methodology called analytical hierarchy process. As the name suggests, this is nothing but a more formal and structured approach to transparent decision making. Of course, there are multiple steps to it. You have to construct a problem hierarchy. You have to do pairwise comparison of the alternatives within each problem hierarchy, right? And then compute a weight vector for all the different alternatives. Yeah, then you kind of make a decision on which alternative you pick. So essentially, you're deciding between multiple alternatives using analytical hierarchy process. Okay. So to explain that, I've taken a visual from the AHP manual. Over here, there's a goal which is on the left-hand side, and there are multiple criteria which you have to qualify to meet the goal, right? So we say criteria A, criteria B, criteria C, all these have to be met for me to say I have succeeded in achieving the goal, right? So for instance, I say, okay, the goal is that I build a startup. So for me to build a startup, criteria is I need to have good idea. Criteria B is I need to have good team. And then criteria C is that I need to have good funding, good idea, good team, good funding. Then you'll achieve your goal, right? So now when I go to good idea, there I have multiple criteria again. How do I come to a good idea, right? I probably need very open thinking. I need to have very innovative people on the team. I need to have give them time to really pursue out of the box thinking. So the multiple criteria for, let us say, ideation and creativity. There could be multiple criteria for the other activities as well, right? So we note down the sub criteria for the main criteria, and then look at the alternative options, right? So how what kind of solutions are available to achieve this goal. So there could be other ways in which I achieve this goal. And so those are also noted down and mapped against these, what do you say, criteria. And a pairwise comparison is done. So you compare A1, A2, and then A1, A3, A1, A4, and mark which one is most important of this sub criteria, which one is most important of this B sub criteria, which one is most important again, C sub criteria. Further, you do the same for A, B, C criteria as well. Which ones are the most important? And then, okay. So now over here, how do you objectively do it? So you start ranking the criteria against one another by using numbers which are spaced well apart. In the sense, if you want it is probably easier for me to go between totally undesirable to most preferred, and midway is neither desired nor right, nor undesired, right? So then it is easier for me to say, okay, this is desirable, not desirable, this is neutral. But if I have 5 criteria or 7 criteria, then you have further breakdown into moderate desire, very strong desire, so on and so forth. So ideally, you shouldn't go more. You should pick even number of preferences, and that too fewer the better, 3 or 5, not more than that. And then you analyze, map each criteria against the other. For instance, if you look at this, what you can see is criteria A1 is much more preferred than criteria A2, right? And so on and so forth. Whereas criteria A2 is much less preferred than criteria A3. So these will come out very clearly in this matrix. And once you have this, you again go back and construct a score of which of these criteria are most important to meet the goal. And then your decision on whether you pick alternative 1, alternative 2, or alternative 3 is very clearly made for you. So this is analytical hierarchy process. Further, now we get into the testing stage, wherein we're looking at the product has been developed, and now how do you actually ensure that the product performs good, its efficiency is there, and that it is able to deliver on the desired outcomes. For this, we actually have multiple types of testing. I did touch upon this very briefly in the beginning. Functional testing, which only focuses on the product functionality. That's it. Does this product meet the basic functional criteria or not? A/B testing. There is 2 versions of the same product are made and given to 2 control groups, and understood which control group prefers the product and why. So that is A/B testing. Market testing is then there's only one product, but there are 2 different markets now. One is for the very young generation, and one is for the young generation, and let us say we offer them, right? The very young generation may say, this is useless, I need a touch screen on this remote to actually make use it, right? Whereas the slightly more younger ones may still go with whatever we have with some enhanced functionalities. Then installation qualification, operation qualification, and performance qualification. Now, all IQ, OQ, PQ, as it is very commonly known, is a very large framework by itself, which looks at how a product which is developed can be qualified for the field. So when a product is actually functionally tested and certified, everything is there, you take it to a field, you install it in, let us say, a factory or something. You first have to do installation qualification, and there's a checklist for installation qualification, run time execution exercise that you have to do for that. Operational qualification is not just installing, but then qualifying the product for the operational parameters, okay, that we had earlier agreed upon. And finally, performance qualification is pushing then the product to the peak performance, fine-tuning and getting the peak performance from the product. Okay. So I'll skip this R&D canvas in interest of time, but to just give you a quick context, what this R&D canvas does is it allows you to decide in a very qualitative manner on what your research focus should be, what are the risks associated with your research, who are the stakeholders who have to be engaged in doing this research, what kind of outcomes will be generated, what kind of data is available for you, right? So it gives some framework for pursuing R&D, just like a business model canvas, wherein you decide on whether or not to go with a business model. R&D canvas gives you a template for deciding whether or not the R&D is worth pursuing, taking into consideration what the actual initial case is, what is the context, what is the risk associated with that R&D, who are the stakeholders, and what is the knowledge, right? Okay, knowledge requirement and knowledge development for the product. Finally, we look at commercialization. In commercialization, we have multiple frameworks again, because commercialization is all about business, and over here, there is scope for multiple frameworks in doing a complete techno-economic analysis, only a technology analysis, innovation analysis, right? So on and so forth. I would briefly walk you through each of these. Right. One thing I just found really, one of our professors at IIM had taught is that there's nothing like a technical problem, a market problem, or a finance problem. In the end, everything is a business problem, right? Because the buck stops there. If business is not performing, it doesn't, if a product is not performing, whether technology-wise or any other thing, eventually it impacts the business, which is supposed to make these products and sell them and make revenue out of it, right? Okay. So Doblin's 10 types of innovation framework. This is a structured way of looking at different aspects that are required for innovation. Right? I'll better explain it with an example here. So when you look at a auditorium, right, or a function, then you have the users or the listeners in the stadium, right? There's a orchestra who is actually doing all the internal work and telling how each one has to play, what role they have, and everything else. And then there is a offering. There is, okay, the product or the service that you are offering, right? So the product or the service is what the consumers consume, but then there is someone in between Pardon? The product or the services what the consumers consume.
Sir,
but-
on, sir.
Yeah.
Muted, sir.
Okay. Yeah, the product or service is what the consumers are consuming, but there is a lot of activity that has to happen in the background, which is the orchestra, right? So the experience, the consumer engagement, brand, channel, and service are the experience that the consumers have. What is being offered, what is the play that is being played, or what is the music that is being played is the product or service which is offered. And then what are the processes, internal manufacturing processes, structure of the organization, network, what is the profit model for your organization? All these are the internal themes, right? So this framework looks at how innovation can be driven by taking a more consumer focused approach, and then optimizing your processes, structures, and everything else so that you can offer better products, more innovative products. This is yet another framework. Now, I'm not going to get into the details. Yet another framework called pest analysis, which looks at 4 key factors. These are external factors. Earlier, we were looking at mostly internal factors, which is process, structure, network, profit model, and everything, which are internal to you. Even the channel, service, brand, consumer engagement, all these are internal. You are creating a brand. You are offering the product or service through a channel, right? But then when you go to pest analysis, you're looking at more external factors, not internal, like political factors. What if the prevailing government is not very progressive and doesn't want to pursue decarbonization, right? Then would a product around decarbonization be worthwhile pursuing? Whereas economic factors, right? So what kind of economic policies, incentives, loans, and other things are there, right? What is the current interest ratio offered by banks? Is there enough equity capital that can be pumped in? So these become the economic factors. Venture, what is the venture capital activity like? Then there are social factors. That is, lot of, as you probably understand, a lot of the behaviors are social behaviors. For instance, say for instance, there's one water filter company which was saying that we would just put a water filter under the sink, and then we will kind of the water comes out of it, it will be pure water that can be used for consumption, right? But that may be socially unacceptable. People may prefer storing water in a pot or something and consuming it from that, as opposed to directly consuming from a tap. In India, we still are not very kind of accepting of drinking water directly from a tap, right? So that could be a social factor that we have to factor in when you go for a product. And technological factor. So what is the innovation scene like? How fast is the technology growing? Is it a wise thing to actually launch the product now? When I see that maybe in 6 months to a year, the technology may be completely obsolete, right? So looking at external factors beyond your control is what a pest analysis does. So looking at political, economic, social, and technology factors. And then what you do is you weigh each of these parameters. So there could be 10 parameters in in all, two political, four economic, three social, and one technological, right? So you say which one of these parameters is most likely going to impact your product and its performance, so on and so forth. And you take a call that if my score is less than, say, 70%, it is not worth it to pursue this product at this point because there's a huge risk, right? Yeah, so quick example here. So we are all familiar with Xiaomi as a brand, and this could be an analysis being done in US, right? So politically, yeah, Xiaomi is a Chinese brand. So if Xiaomi wants to launch itself in US in this day and age, geopolitical scenario, good luck. Right? They'll find it really tough. But the other part is, yeah, Xiaomi has a very good support from Chinese political system. So rather than US, they may focus other countries where there's less negative bias against China, right? Economic. So yeah, Xiaomi offers very cheap product, pocket-friendly, budget-conscious consumers. Unlike Apple or what is that, level 1 products which are on the premium side. Technological, it could be that, okay, they put in the latest technology, and they are able to compete even with the best of the best, maybe slightly lower in terms of the features, but really there, right? So new phones capable of operating the 5th generation mobile communication. So those are technology aspects. And then social is, more and more consumers are switching to smartphones. So smartphone is a very accepted behavior. Consumers in Western nations have a notion of any product label made in China is substandard. So these are social aspects. Now Xiaomi has to weigh these in and take a call whether they want to launch a particular product in China, in US as a Chinese brand, or they want to actually set up a US entity, US brand completely, and then go through it in that fashion, right? Such analysis. So the third framework is a business model framework. This is a very, very popular framework used by every entrepreneur. What it helps is, it helps kind of convey very clearly and concisely how your activities, your products, and your resources, your efforts are offering value to the consumer. So on the left side, you have key partners, your resources, your activities that you do, and what are the products and other things that you offer, right? What is the value proposition that these internal factors offer to the consumer? So what channels do you use to offer better value to the consumer? How are you going to sustain those relationships with the consumer? What consumer segments are you targeting? So very clearly mapping how your organization creates and delivers value to the consumers, right? And eventually, in doing so, earns revenue to meet the cost objectives. So this is a very useful business model canvas framework. Again, this is the same thing, but actually filled in for a automotive company which is trying to launch in the US market. So a Honda or a Toyota trying to launch its product in the market. So what does the US market need? Do my products and services actually offer the value to US consumers, right? So a worked out example of the business model canvas. Again, I'm skipping in the interest of time. But the key thing that I wanted to convey from this slightly longish 2-hour session is that, I'll go back to the first slide, right? Yeah. Okay. We need to know what kind of problem we are solving, what kind of problem we are facing. We need to ensure that we capture the relevant information required for problem solving, frame the problem properly, use multiple methodologies, multiple frameworks, templates to address the problem, break it down into smaller sub problems and address each one of them, right? And then that will actually help in decision making, right? So now I think I'm open to take any questions from the audience on yeah, not just these, but anything in general that they want to understand.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the participants?
Okay, so
It was really a wonderful session, sir, giving the clear step-by-step procedure, what are involved uh, in this R&D, as well as how to make after our research, how to go into a business model, or how to make our product commercialize. A lot of things are involved, not only the research, apart from the research for the commercialized aspects, so many procedures which was been clearly explained by you as well as Miss Aboli. I am very thankful to you, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure as well, Dr. Padma, and to the GR IIT team for it's actually a good opportunity to explain about a topic that is so vast, right? But at the same time is something that really can help address gives you an idea of how multiple areas, multiple industries and multiple players can apply frameworks to solve problems and in decision making. Yeah. If there is any questions further in this topic, then we are certainly open. I am leaving my email here. Okay.
One question in the chat box, sir, how to handle an unhappy and angry customer?
Okay.
To handle an unhappy and angry customer.
Okay. So obviously, the reason again you have to go back to the same problem framework, right? So why do you have an unhappy customer is the first thing. Why is the so angry is a separate thing. But why do you have an unhappy customer? Was your product offering incorrect? Was your understanding of the requirement incorrect, right? Did you offer a inferior product, promise something else and offer an inferior product, right? Or well, there could be multiple things. So I don't know exactly which way you look at it. If it is when you're talking about an unhappy consumer, it is a major challenge for the business, right? So the first step would be to understand where the consumer is coming from. Is he complaining about the performance? Is he complaining about the cost? Is he complaining about the service? Is he complaining about something else? Okay, so you go back and do an assessment on why he's unhappy, then you formulate a problem statement. Okay. So it all starts with an investigation. Everything in a problem solving starts with gathering information, investigating it, and then coming to what product features, what functionality, or what business activities have to be done to enhance value that you offer to the consumer. The only reason consumer is unhappy is because you are not offering the value that you promised to him, and that is why he is unhappy with you. How do you enhance that value is how you look at it.
Thank you so much, sir, for spending your valuable time with us in your busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Look forward to answering any more questions through email or any other meeting.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Definitely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abolimu. Yeah. My dear participants, small announcement to you all that tomorrow session, we don't have any tomorrow schedule because of the festival, Bakrid, and we'll all meet on Friday. Thank you, all of you. Feedback link already posted. Again posted. Please check and fill it. Thank you all.